Establishing a work schedule that accommodates state requirements for school seat time and attendance, as well as navigating other K-12 and post-secondary requirements can be difficult. And identifying and managing the multiple sources of public funding for apprenticeship can be confusing and time-consuming, particularly for small businesses who are unfamiliar with the funding sources. Yet, while it is especially important for small businesses to engage in youth apprenticeship, this can be an expensive proposition up front. To drive the expansion of high-quality youth apprenticeship programs, JFF recommends that Congress build on the National Apprenticeship Act to define youth apprenticeship as a registered apprenticeship program specifically designed for serving youth ages 16 to 24, whether in or out of school. Congress should incentivize states to align their education and workforce systems and update K-12 policies, such as seat time requirements, in ways that encourage engagement in and expansion of youth apprenticeship. We also urge policies that encourage the development of high-quality work-based learning opportunities as part of core academic as well as career and technical education programs. To drive diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in youth apprenticeship, we recommend that Congress refocus investments on completion and wage equity. We recommend providing flexible funding that supports pre-apprenticeship, inclusive outreach and recruitment, accessible classroom instruction, robust mentorship, and apprenticeship navigators to guide young people through their program. Youth apprentices also need supportive services to address barriers such as the cost of training materials and testing fees, access to technology and the internet, especially in the age of COVID, and transportation to school and work, which often has to happen in the same day. We recommend that Congress support employers in providing inclusive workplaces, facilitating the creation of training, funding, and support to small businesses to increase their capacity to adopt these best practices. To increase small business participation in youth apprenticeship, JFF recommends investing in intermediaries, particularly local and industry organizations, to convene employers and stakeholders, as well as to reduce the programmatic and administrative burdens of delivering youth apprenticeships. Similarly, Congress can support sector strategies that convene employers to build career pathways and regional talent pipelines, while incentivizing youth apprenticeship as a featured strategy within those sector partnerships. Congress can assist small businesses in accessing information and training to navigate the differing state youth employment laws, as well as the multiple streams of public funding available. In parallel, Congress can encourage greater investment in youth apprenticeship by stakeholders administering eligible funding, such as WIOA, Pell Grants, and the emerging infrastructure and CHIPS grants. Thank you again for the opportunity to share this testimony. I appreciate the committee's longstanding interest in apprenticeship, and I look forward to supporting your efforts to facilitate the use of youth apprenticeship among small businesses.
Thank you, Ms. Kobus. Ms. Watkins, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Crow and Ranking Member Kim, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss this important issue. My name is Shani Watkins, and I am the Director of West Sound Technical Skills Center in Bremerton, Washington. I also serve as the Region 5 Vice President for the Association for Career and Technical Education, known as ACTE, and am the 2022 ACTE Administrator of the Year. West Sound Technical Skills Center provides Advanced Career and Technical Education, or CTE, programs to 10 school districts across the Kitsap Peninsula. It provides increased equity and access for students in small rural areas as well as larger suburban areas. It serves more than 500 students in their junior and senior years of high school. Students spend half their day at West Sound Tech and the other half of their day at their sending school. We offer 13 programs across areas such as IT, automotive, construction, HVAC, healthcare, law and public safety, and more. CTE programs like the ones offered at my school engage students through hands-on active learning and prepare them with the skills they need for both further education and fulfilling careers in vital in-demand industries and occupations. At West Sound Tech, we have a variety of partnerships with local businesses, including small business, to provide important, relevant learning and paid work opportunities for our students to better prepare for life after high school. This morning, I'd like to share with you a few examples of these partnerships. Each year, West Sound Tech holds a Try-A-Trade Day where our industry partners bring their tools and equipment to our local fairgrounds so that students from grades 9-12 can experience firsthand what different careers offer. We also hold an on-site event for students called the West Sound Tech Works. This is a 2-day event where our local business and industry partners come to share their experiences and knowledges with students. Students attend sessions and participate in different workshops provided by our industry partners. In addition, West Sound Tech holds an evening event called Explore Your Future with community partners including business and industry, local support services, 2-year and 4-year colleges, apprenticeship programs, and the military. In total, more than 65 different partners hold booths with information for families about opportunities and pathways after high school. Typically, we have more than 500 students and families in attendance at that event. Each spring, we also hold a practice interviewing event for students with business and industry partners from the student's specific content area. In another partnership example, the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard supports an annual work-study program hiring up to 30 students during the summer between their junior and senior years. These students are provided an hourly wage and benefits while participating in work and training situations at different shops located throughout the shipyard. Students learn key safety requirements, use various hand and power tools, and acquire the fundamental knowledge and skills necessary to work in an industrial environment. At the end of the summer, students return to school for their first semester of school, their senior year. Then during the second semester of their senior year, the students again work full-time in the shipyard. Often, the work-study experience leads to a future career for those students. Once hired after high school, candidates qualify to enter various apprenticeship programs offered at the shipyard. This model could be replicated with other small businesses to better support workforce needs and experiences for students to prepare for living wage careers. As in the Shipyard Partnership, West Sound Tech has a long history of preparing students to enter into apprenticeship programs after high school. Both our construction careers and welding courses have pre-apprenticeship articulations with the Laborers and Iron Workers Union, respectively. Students meet all requirements for entry into the apprenticeship programs while they're at West Sound Tech. For example, students in the construction program learn all of the physical requirements for entry, complete the minimum math requirements, and obtain relevant certifications. Despite our strong partnerships and work-based learning opportunities, barriers exist for students. The cost of programs, transportation, the needs of low-income students for paid work experience, and the lack of capacity in small businesses are all challenges we grapple with regularly. Increased federal funding for programs like the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act and apprenticeships, the expansion of youth and pre-apprenticeship activities, incentives for small businesses to partner with educational institutions, and targeted investments in paid work-based learning experiences and student certifications can all help to address these challenges. In conclusion, stronger partnerships between small business and secondary schools will help to increase a segment of the economy that is currently experiencing significant challenges in finding a ready workforce. Students engaged in CTE programs are better prepared in the workforce, less likely to need significant student loans, and are more likely to have the skills and credentials to meet workplace needs. Thank you, Chairman Crow, Ranking Member Kim, and committee for this opportunity today. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Watkins. Mr. Ebbing, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Crow, Ranking Member Kim, and the distinguished members of this subcommittee. Again, my name is Jared Ebbing. I am the Community and Economic Development Director here in Mercer County, Ohio. Mercer County is a rural county in west central Ohio, which is along the Ohio and Indiana border. We are part of a region of Ohio that is known for its small homegrown companies involved in everything from advanced manufacturing to ag to food processing. My office works with our many local companies to ensure that they have the personnel necessary to continue to grow their businesses and invest in our area. The vast majority of the jobs created here in Mercer County can be attributed to small businesses. While we do have a couple of nationally known larger corporations, most of our companies started right here years ago in somebody's basement, garage, or outbuilding with just a handful of workers. The entrepreneurial spirit here has always been alive and well in this region because people just know how to make things and have never really been afraid of the hard work needed to make it happen. While these businesses haven't really asked for anything more than our local support in their efforts to grow and expand, they are now most certainly worried about the sustainability of their workforce in the future. COVID-19 and its impact created an unprecedented new set of challenges for businesses. While larger corporations adjusted utilizing remote work as an option, many of our smaller manufacturers had a hard time managing, training, and thus developing their future workforce as a result of the pandemic. Additionally, the Great Resignation, supply chain issues, increased raw material cost, and now hyper wage inflation have all compounded their issues, making it very difficult for our small businesses to manage their operations. As such, we hear from our companies every day that say that even though there is work there, they're struggling to complete it due to the various open positions that they have. So many of these unfilled positions are middle skill jobs, meaning they require a high school diploma and some form of post-secondary education, but not necessarily always a traditional four-year college degree. As a result, companies are indeed looking at apprenticeships and any other on-the-job training programs that could help. In order to make this happen, ongoing collaboration among our stakeholders at every level is vital to identify best practices and implement impactful programs. I'd like to share one such example of a program that we've implemented to great success. HometownOpportunity.com is an online-based resource simply aimed at increasing the awareness of our many local great careers that exist in our area to our students and to our families. Our companies are most certainly in need of our local talent, who all too often do not realize that these great opportunities exist right here in their own backyard. Furthermore, we are utilizing this resource to make meaningful connections between our emerging workforce and the companies hoping to hire and thus train them. We focused our efforts on first making sure students are aware of what our local companies do, what skills are needed, and what opportunities truly exist. Properly educating our students on the myriads of options and opportunities to them may sound simple, but it is actually surprisingly difficult when teenagers' attentions and interests aren't necessarily on their future. We've all been there. Through these career navigation tools, new career-based curriculum within our schools, and the hiring of county-wide career coaches, an appreciable increase in the awareness among our young people is finally occurring. With such awareness and newfound interest, students are enrolling in job shadow opportunities along with pre-apprenticeship programs, which eventually lead to full apprenticeship programs at our local companies. It's a long process, but once students are aware of what's here, it is so much easier to introduce them to the necessary training that combines on-the-job paid experiences with their classroom learning. Although we feel very good about our local initiatives that we've implemented to date, more resources, ideas, and support would help. A national push for career development courses within our schools is needed. Similar support was given to the successful implementation of STEM-based classes across our country over the past decade, resulting in more young people becoming interested in science and math. Encouraging our classrooms nationwide to increase and offer more meaningful career awareness and guidance curriculum, such as CareerWise and Edge Factor, would most certainly have a positive impact on our nation's youth. Additionally, an expansion of federal programs such as Apprenticeship USA and Pell Grants for technical education would also help our emerging workforce become better trained for the careers of the future. Now more than ever, we need to find ways to enhance the workforce development initiatives and programs that work. We must continue to support the business organizations and nonprofits who train, advocate, and bring entrepreneurs together. Work with our educators to ensure we're not just graduating students from school, but to an actual meaningful career. Engage with organizations such as the Small Business and Entrepreneur Council, U.S. Chamber and Small Business Administration to come up with new ideas, resources, and innovative policy solutions. Doing so will empower small businesses and thus our communities to succeed long-term by investing in our greatest asset, our people. In closing, thank you to the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify today and for advocating and making policies that support small businesses across this great country of ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ebbing. I will begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Ginsburg. You had mentioned, years ago when you first looked towards Switzerland and Europe that already had these well-established and very successful programs. I'd be interested in what you learned as you tried to replicate or use elements of that model here in the United States, starting in Denver and in Colorado, both with respect to resistance that you may have faced, cultural resistance or other structural resistance to implementing and expanding these models, but also just the barriers both with businesses and in the education system that you faced.
Thank you, Chairman Crow. Big questions. What I would tell you, what impressed me about their system is that it was market-based, meaning that they didn't create apprenticeships if the jobs didn't exist. So as industries grew and shrank, at least a young person would have the opportunity to know what their opportunities would be post-apprenticeship. Second is that their model scales so that 70% of young people take advantage of it and 40% of businesses participate because there's a true return on investment to the business. They do not subsidize the wages. Their education system is virtually free, much more so than it is here. So the related training is not as expensive, and there needs to be investments. But that's a powerful driver to scale. Now, when you bring that to the U.S., what we've learned is, when the U.S. built its road system in the country, our highway system, you needed the roads, you needed the off-ramps, the on-ramps, everything that made traffic flow and commerce flow. Youth apprenticeship, in particular, is not something that's intuitive for a business to think there's an ROI for. Plus, they don't have the tools they need to be successful. So building those tools for them, creating the connections with the high schools so that it could be successful, and to drive the ROI, which is what I observed overseas, is that if a young person is still living at home and is making $15 an hour, up to $45,000 over the 3 years of their apprenticeship, the company is investing in them. As I mentioned, our employers in Colorado have invested over $45 million in wages and training dollars. But it's not an expense in the sense of a donation. It's an investment in their workforce. So the challenge is ahead, particularly in a registered system, which I think is critical to ensure that if you're doing business in 50 states or 2 states or 3, you're not doing business in different ways. The registered system, it's part of my role at the ACA, is to make it simpler and more streamlined for businesses and more business responsive. In schools, in 50 states, we have, in essence, 50 different ways to do it. When seat time is a requirement, as it is in New York, for example, it's very difficult for an apprentice to spend time in a workplace. Now, we're hacking the system on a small scale right now. In Colorado, we have a competency-based system. So our students are earning credit for the learning that takes place in the workplace. We need more of that across the country. Those are some of the challenges. With employers, it's about setting up the system. Intermediaries are critical. In Switzerland, for example, industry associations drive their system. They're not ways to lobby Congress or the local Senate. It is, in essence, to build their future workforce. And as a result, a very small country competes with companies like the U.S. because of the quality of their workforce.
Thank you for that. Ms. Kobus, you had mentioned the need to invest in intermediaries. Can you just briefly describe for us, what do you see as the most effective intermediary models that you've worked with?
Absolutely. And I'll pick up on some of what Noel was saying about intermediaries as well. JFF is a national intermediary, so I don't want to undermine our value here, but to your question, I think there's a real need to invest in local intermediaries and industry associations, because that's who small businesses are already working with. So to get the word out to small businesses, to give them a partner that they trust in really launching a program, having local chambers, local business associations within a specific industry, that's a place that you already have an in with small businesses. And then those intermediaries can bring together the employers to find what their common skills and competency needs are, design a program, broker the relationships with the education and training providers, and then even step in to help with the administration of the program in an ongoing basis. So a lot of small businesses, might be put off by the paperwork or not sure, what they're fully signing up for in administering a program, and they can find it easier to really enter the space if their role is to be the employer, not to hold together the whole apprenticeship program and all of the different relationships required.
Thank you. My time has expired. The ranking member, Ms. Kim, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I really appreciate all of our witnesses focusing on youth apprenticeship. It is critically important, and in my district, we have several high schools that are in the IB program, and then they are also providing technical programs. Like one high school in my district is Troy High School, and they provide not only the IB but Troy Tech programs through which they encourage their students to take 150 hours of internship, and they do get credit for their graduation requirements. And both I mean, all of you spoke about the need to make this, as Mr. Ginsburg, you mentioned, you don't want this to be just a program, but you want this to be a transformational system. And, Ms. Watkins, Ms. Covey, you all talked about utilizing the intermediaries, and Chairman also asked through your question how we can replicate this through nationwide efforts so that it could become a system, not just a program at one school or one district. So what are some of the challenges that you face, Mr. Ginsburg, as you make this career-wise a successful program? When you work with the local school districts, presenting this idea to provide the students with the credits, what kind of challenges, if any, did you face in making this idea into a credit offered system?
I assumed when I first learned about this approach at ETH University in Switzerland that our biggest obstacle would be the schools. How do you take a young person out of class for both 2 days a week and then 3 days a week and earn their credit? In the room with me in the delegation was the head of curriculum at Denver Public Schools, and she said simply, I can do that. And we now have 17 school districts that do that. So the challenge, frankly, is not the schools directly, it is in how they schedule. If you have block schedules, as some districts do that we, in other states that we work with, it's difficult to let a student out. So, changing those policies and scheduling to enable it is one way to address that problem. The real challenge, honestly, is scale with business. They need the support which intermediaries provide to give them the tools, the training, and the technology to successfully launch a youth apprenticeship program, and youth is important. The statistics that you were sharing earlier go up to 24. Doing this while students are still in school, I believe is key, is the bridge to opportunity and the systemic change that we need. And the numbers that we're seeing at CareerWise are much more balanced, both in male and female, with over-indexing on marginalized communities in terms of the outcomes and those students that are being hired.
Thank you. I want to address the next questions to Mr. Ebbing, who's joining us virtually. In your testimony, you talk about raising awareness of the opportunities that exist for youth apprenticeships and career development courses in high schools. That's what everybody's talking about, but specifically through your hometown opportunity. So can you please elaborate on that and talk about that resource as well as other ways that you are raising awareness for those programs? And can you cite some of the examples?
Yeah, most certainly. Appreciate it. Appreciate the question. Yeah, so when I first got into this role, it was just startling on how many young people and their families just didn't know. They went through high school, they would go through the traditional route and would graduate and just didn't know either what was here or what training programs even existed. So they just kind of followed the beaten down path of what had always been. And what has always been isn't what is today, and what's the future for our companies and what they need and what the training options that are truly out there. So we realized early on, all these programs that could and would exist aren't going to make an impact if students aren't aware of what they need to be, aware of. So we kind of just started with that simple process of creating, relationships with our schools and our companies to make sure the schools, the guidance counselors, the teachers all knew what these opportunities were. And again, created this platform that really helps connect the dots, create that curriculum, create that content that students, can say, oh, I didn't know this was an option for me. And just in the last 10 years since we've been doing it, the number of young people that are, 10 years ago were just straight going off to college, which there's nothing wrong with that, but just simply doing it because I would say 90% of our students were going down that path. Now I'd say it's closer to probably 50-50. Many more young people are going into the career-based fields. Our careers, high schools are filling up. Like I said, at least 50% of the students are now going that direction. And many, many more are enrolling in pre-apprenticeship programs, and then apprenticeship programs. So to us, it really starts with awareness and making sure the students at a as early age as possible understand what's here and start to direct them into what programs could be. If we do that right, I think more and more students will take advantage of these programs and will most certainly benefit the companies because they have somebody that, truly wants to be there and understands why they're going in that direction. So.
Thank you. I'll yield back. We're over time.
Thank you. The gentlelady's time has expired. I will now recognize the gentlelady, Ms. Davids from Kansas, the chairwoman of the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Tax, and Capital Access, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Crow, and to Ranking Member Kim for holding this hearing today. In the Kansas 3rd and across the country, we're definitely seeing serious workforce shortages in every sector, and it's, I think, been especially challenging for small businesses. And, as we continue to invest in our youth and workforce development programs, I know we're hearing from you all about some of the better ways for us to be able to do that. This is going to be the way that we build a stronger and more resilient economy, and that includes young people. Us encouraging the work you're doing and encouraging young people to go into and explore entrepreneurship and apprenticeships. And that's why I was really, really proud to help introduce the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Act with my fellow committee member, Rep. Dean Phillips. And for folks who aren't familiar with this bill, our bill would require the SBA to develop an entrepreneurship curriculum for the 21st Century Learning Centers, which provide additional educational opportunities and resources to typically underserved students, which we've heard you all make reference to in your work. This curriculum will be developed and implemented using the partnership with local volunteers from SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. So I wanted to Ms. Kobe's, in your written testimony, you did recommend expanding youth entrepreneurship opportunities in conjunction with youth apprenticeship. I'm curious if you could share with us how the legislation like the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Bill could help do that, and then maybe talk a little bit about the ways that entrepreneurship and apprenticeships can go hand in hand.
Yeah, I'll start with the last part of your question, which I think youth apprenticeship and entrepreneurship actually go together quite well. So I appreciate that question, and I think small businesses are a place where you see that juncture. So if you think about a student who hasn't really explored entrepreneurship before, being in a small business is a setting where they're more likely to see all of the different aspects that you need to really operate a business. So through what you think of as, the more traditional parts of a youth apprenticeship, a student would learn the technical skills that they need in the industry that they're focused on. And so they could learn, I think you mentioned HVAC, they could learn their HVAC skills or, their insurance skills or whatever. But then being in a small business, they'll actually see much more upfront and closely than they would in a large business what it actually takes to make all of the back end decisions to run that business, to market the business, the different partners that you'd need to be engaged with. And the people that they're learning from would bring that broader range of skills and exposure. And so that value of a small business for students who are really considering entrepreneurship is a great pairing. In terms of how specific legislation can support entrepreneurship, I can follow up with you in writing. JFF has thoughts on that go beyond my thoughts for this morning. So I can put that in the record for you as a follow-up.
Oh, that would be great. And one of the most disappointing parts about these is we only get 5 minutes on, especially when they're very interesting hearings like the one today. Mr. Ginsburg, I actually do have a specific question for you, but I saw a lot of head nodding while your fellow witness was speaking. Do you want to add anything to that first question? And then I'll follow up. I actually have questions for everybody on the panel.
Well, I would certainly say ditto. That's why I was shaking my head. Everything you said is so right on. And we are now in the second year of a pilot working just with Black-owned businesses in inner city Denver, which tend to be very small. There might only be 2 or 3 employees, but now they have an apprentice. And for all the reasons you said, these young people are getting to see the entire business. It's what I did when I started Intertech with 12 employees. I learned everything. So apprenticeship works particularly well for small businesses because the economics works well, and people like working with young people and seeing them grow and expand. So more to come in terms of the evidence, but what I know from the evidence we have so far with Black and brown students in our programs is they take advantage of this more so than white students, frankly, because the narrative of I'm going to college still exists. So for marginalized communities, this is a real game changer and ultimately can make college more affordable if they choose.
Well, thank you. And we'll definitely follow up. I'd love to hear more about the pilot program. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, and we'll have a chance to go for a second round if we want to as well. The gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams, the vice ranking member of the committee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Kim, for bringing everybody here, and thank you for the panel. It's a great panel. Just to begin with, I'm from Texas. I employ several hundred people down there as we speak. I think we got 6 apprentices working for us this morning. But I'd like to start off by addressing a recent announcement we've had of another month of staggering high inflation. And for over a year, American families and businesses have been put under increased financial stress due to increasing prices. And Tuesday's Consumer Price Index reading of 8.2% showed that inflation is still painfully high, causing more uncertainty for small business owners on Main Street. A recent survey by the NFIB found that 86% of the business owners reported having to raise their average selling prices due to Biden's skyrocketing inflation, and I'm in the car business, and it's not easy to raise prices on customers. These constant rising prices are not sustainable. We must keep reckless government spending and begin to get more disciplined with our finances, just as every business and family across the country is forced to do. So, Mr. Ebbing, briefly, can you elaborate on how increased prices have altered operations for the businesses you work with, and how does this affect their ability to plan for future growth opportunities, if you can do that fairly quickly?
Yeah, everything you said, we do here on a daily basis. They have to make ends meet, and they are reluctant to increase their pricing because they don't want to lose, potential business. But at the same time, that they have to. And on top of that, the hyper wage inflation that they're experiencing, they're being forced to do more with less. So it is very challenging. Obviously the workforce piece of it is a huge piece of the puzzle that we need to try to help solve, because there's a lot of other things going on right now, again, including increased prices that they're having to deal with every single day. We hear it. Mm-hmm. We hear it every day.
Okay. As I said, I've been in the car business now for 51 years, an 89-year-old family business. We have hundreds of people, and I know firsthand that we're always in need of more mechanics, technicians, other critical skill workers. I was Secretary of State of Texas before I was in Congress, and one of the stories I like to tell is that we lost $1 billion improvement in Texas on the coast, Governor Perry and myself. We'd locked it in, going to sign it the next week, and I get a call, and they decided to go to Minnesota. And if you're from Texas, Minnesota is not a factor. But they're going to Minnesota simply for one thing: Minnesota had welders. And I've always tell that story because this is a good example of what we're talking about. So I know about the need of these skilled workers, and our country's facing a growing skills gap, as we've talked about, as younger generations are not joining the vocational workforce at a high enough rate. We have 100,000 kids every year dropping out of school in the 9th grade in Texas. That's 100,000 every year. And we need to let them know it's okay to be a welder, plumber, carpenter, mechanic, and so forth, and you all are doing that. And so it's not necessary for a high school student to always attend a 4-year college. I think we've seen that, but a 4-year degree is not for everyone. So we need to ensure students know that there are other higher demand opportunities that provide them with a good paying job and successful career. And we know the jobs, what they can get when they get out, right? Everybody thinks lawyer, business guy, architect, or whatever, but lots of times, many times, there's more out there for these paying jobs than is in other areas. And that's why I introduced the Student Debt Alternative and CTE Awareness Act. Check it out, which informs high school students about career and technical education opportunities before they commit to a traditional 4-year university and take out student loans. Of course, they may not have to pay the student loans back, but at least they have that in front of them. Instead of forcing students into years of debt, this ensures that high school seniors know what their viable options are. So Ms. Watkins, How can we encourage more students to pursue CTE, and how is your center ensuring that high school students are made aware of the CTE programs and continue to stay involved?
That's an excellent question. I think we're often what we consider the best kept secret in our area. In terms of recruiting and marketing and supporting students, a huge part of that goes back to what parents understand and what our typical rhetoric has been, which is college for all, which is great if that's the direction you want to go. If you have interest and opportunity in other areas, such as welding, for example, I have a 16-year-old son who's decided he wants to be a welder and he's going to work in Louisiana. So it's giving them an opportunity to see their aspirations and to try things out when they're younger. And so I think a big part of this goes back to exposing students at younger ages to a variety of careers that go beyond what is typically addressed in an academic environment.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, I was going to say, in closing, there's no reason a kid in the 9th grade should lose hope
No.
in this country. And that's why it's important what you're doing and what my bill does and others. We got to keep the greatest workforce in the world is right here in America.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield my time back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I will now recognize the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Tenney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and thank you to the witnesses for this great committee discussion, because I'm a small business owner that is always looking to try to find people to work in our business and to work with our community partners. And, we hear a lot about this labor shortage. It's the number one thing I hear on the campaign trail from employers is how do we get people to come to work? How do we get them trained and skilled? And we are advertising for the first time extensively instead of having a waiting list for employees, which is really unusual for our business. We're in a rural area. We provide a lot of benefits that most businesses don't, except the government. But we compete against the government for great employees. This is great that we're trying to find students younger and get them into things. The tight labor market obviously is great for students, or great for young people, and great for people to get, to drive up the wages, get better benefits. We know what that's like because we're in a rural area, so we've always had experienced the tight labor market, and it gives the employees an advantage to be able to take care of their families. One of the issues that arise for us that I'm looking at is we cannot find candidates really who have the experience. So this is really why it's so important. And this is not good for workers who are not able to take advantage of this job opportunities and what employers are looking for and needing the staff. We've always tried to bridge gaps with a lot of our salespeople are very clever. They know how to, you can work with the local BOCES and get an apprentice to come in and help. And that's one of the things that I think that we need to rebalance how the government responds to this tension and without getting in the way of the employers, but providing a resource. We obviously have a lot of immigrants that are coming in, which are wonderful in our farm communities and especially helping us. But we also have foreign labor that are being incentivized to come in and take jobs from others. And this sometimes can be a disincentive for some of our small businesses who really just want to hire, as my colleague from Texas pointed out. We have great educational institutions in my region. I just want to mention our BOCES. Again, they're phenomenal with the work that they do. Herkimer College, Mohawk Valley Community College in my area, the community colleges, and generally the system in New York do a wonderful job. And they provide this hands-on training and extra training and high-tech training. Yesterday we talked about right to repair and getting people to be able to learn how to fix things again, and that's a big issue. But right now, the answer to this, what I'm concerned about with this tight labor market is also one thing I wanted to just bring up, because I know I'm using up a lot of my time that I want to ask a couple of you questions, is that one of my greatest experiences as a member of the New York State Assembly was an inner city group came in, young students who said they were for keeping the minimum wage the same, because if the minimum wage went up, there would be less of them who would be able to engage in summer programs. So I just wanted to mention there was a lot of interesting aspects of teaching students about the economy and economic issues. But I first wanted to just draw my attention to Mr. Ginsburg. And you wrote about how many enterprise employees have effective training programs but have difficulty in recruiting young people. What is the problem with recruiting young people? And I have this question burning in my mind. Why aren't they coming out to work, and how do we get them out to work and understand the value and dignity of good work?
I don't think that it's, well, thank you for the question. It's not because they don't want to work, it's they don't know what the opportunities are. What's unique about youth apprenticeship that starts in high school and does career exploration in middle school is they then have an idea of what they might be interested in. The second part of that, though, is, and as an employer, I tried for many years to make those connections, but until career-wise, working as that intermediary, we didn't have the connection to the schools to help the students explore what it is their interests are, to be exposed to the different career options and what the compensation
You're
looks
saying
like.
the schools aren't even talking about this.
They are not connected to the businesses until now. It's not that they didn't want businesses to share that information. Businesses were not showing up. We've created
Career
an
day and
opportunity.
job fairs and all the things that we
Very-
host as members of Congress.
Very episodic,
Yeah.
not systemic.
Okay.
And the systemic component, we have in our tech platformer, it enables employers to see the apprentices, see what their resume is essentially, have a video of that young person explaining their interest and why, and it makes those connections.
Quickly, because I want to ask you this, though. In manufacturing, what are the toughest jobs to fill? I only have a few seconds left.
All of the technical skills.
All of
I will tell you that we have an apprentice who designed, engineered, and built and programmed automation cells that enabled us to bring product back from China, over $5 million worth of product back from China. And he was a high school student when he did that. He's now earning $70,000. The difference was we connected with the schools, in this case Cherry Creek School District, and made the opportunity available for him. It's changed his life.
That's tremendous. Thank you so much. I yield my time back. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. I'm just going to take an opportunity to do one more quick round here because I know there's some more questions, and if you all had some more, I'll loop back with you. But I wanted to flesh out, so I'll recognize myself for another 5 minutes with Ms. Watkins, because one thing that you touched on at the beginning, and you've touched on a couple of points, because we've talked a lot about systematic issues in the school districts and the education system, systematic issues within the business system. But I really want to drive on the students, the apprentices themselves, right? And you touched on in your opening testimony the idea of some barriers that they face, whether it's transportation, whether it's childcare. So in CTE and the shipyards and the areas in Bremerton where you do business, like what are some of those barriers that the individuals are facing, and what are you seeing as effective to breaking down those barriers?
Thank you for the question. So I would say, first of all, transportation is a huge challenge for particularly our location. We are very rural. We have students that travel an hour and a half one way each day to participate in CTE programs with us because they are not offered in their areas. And those students have less access to viable careers in their industries locally, so transportation for them to do an apprenticeship program or to have a work-based learning experience is more challenging. So transportation is a huge issue. The other thing that happens with a lot of our students is that they come from poverty. We have a lot of students that have to support their own families. And so that creates a barrier when internship opportunities, work-based learning opportunities are non-paid. They have to make a decision between finding a job versus finding an opportunity for that career. So that's two of the big ones for us.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I will now yield to the ranking member, Ms. Kim, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad that we held up the hearing as long as we could so we can have Member Hulan join us, because I know you always engage our witnesses with a great question, so I'm glad you're here. And I know on our side we have some members who wants to ask questions, but rather than asking a question, I just, again, wanted to reiterate my special thanks for all of you being here to share your expertise on how the youth engagement, youth apprenticeship, the programs that you are implementing is really working. And I'm really glad to hear, Ms. Watkins, to hear that your 16-year-old son is engaged in welding and becoming a certified welder that will surely prepare him for the job market that's out there. The challenges that we talked about is also, even when we have hearings like this, we have great members of the small business community that we wanted to bring and share their experience as well, just like you're doing. But the challenge is they can't be here because they can't take the time off because they are small businesses. How do they backfill if they leave their operation? So those are the challenges of meeting the labor force, the shortages. So I just wanted to echo the difficulties, the challenges, the workforce development that we need to focus on, training, retaining, the quality labor force. These are the challenges. So it's really important. And Chairman, I really want to thank you for your leadership for us holding these type of hearings more and more it's needed. But obviously, we want to be able to do more roundtable type of discussions so that we can listen to more real life expertise, meeting with those challenges, but telling us what we can do better so we can help build that workforce and fill the gap and all that stuff. So I just wanted to thank you again and share that we understand what you're facing. We appreciate the information you're sharing, and we'll go to work in making sure that youth apprenticeship, for example, as Mr. Ginsburg and all of you mentioned, that it's not just a program, but we can help to make it a transformational system that works. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. I will now recognize the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for the chance to speak, and sorry for being tardy. I'm trying to straddle 3 different committees today at the very same time slot, but my heart is very much with small businesses. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit with you today. Thank you again for your testimonies. There is definitely going to be a generation of youth that will be on the forefront of addressing the emerging challenges that we are all facing collectively today, because these challenges will inevitably require innovative, technical, and advanced solutions. The benefits of youth apprenticeship and of CTE can't be underestimated, especially amid our workforce issues that are impacting businesses on account of the pandemic. So I'm hopeful that today's youth will be able to benefit from the recent action that's been taken in Congress to address some of our nation's most pressing issues, including the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. It's really critical that our nation's youth and small business owners will be able to access the vital workforce development resources that we've provided in light of these once-of-a-generation investments and the millions of jobs that we hope that they will be able to create. My first question is to Ms. Kobes? Kobus, I apologize. You mentioned in your testimony that recipients of these new federal resources will require assistance to be able to learn about apprenticeships and connect to appropriate stakeholders. Could you please elaborate on what this committee and what Congress in general can be doing to make sure that small businesses can tap into the public funding that's available for youth apprenticeship?
Yes, thank you for the question. And I think that ties into the earlier questions around inflation and how our economy is affecting individuals as well. It's certainly true that the economy has affected small businesses in a very serious way. It's also exacerbating the challenges faced by the rising inequality in our country, and individuals who are left out of economic opportunity are facing those consequences even more severely during inflation. And, you know, the investments made through the bills that you mentioned really create an opportunity to invest in our workforce. And I've seen, my husband even works for a manufacturing company in batteries, and they were applying for, a new grant. And it includes now, an equity plan around job quality, around workforce development. And he came to me and he said, who should we be talking to? Mm-hmm. You know, we're there in Colorado as well, and expanding into other locations, but they don't have the background to know these are the workforce development agencies that we can work with. These are the schools that could provide us talented solutions. You know, these are the intermediaries even that we should be tapping into. And so what you have now is funding that's going out to more businesses, to, state agencies, transportation agencies, all of these different opportunities that build in workforce as a core strategy to actually succeed through these grants. But they're not workforce people. And so you really do need a way to get the word out to all of those potential grantees so they can navigate the new workforce incentives that are built within the grant opportunities.
Does anybody have anything else to add? I have another question I'd love to ask as well, but Mr. Ginsburg, you look eager.
What I would say is, in order to scale this, how we connect with business, career-wise, we say we're student-centered, but business-driven. That connection in educating businesses on how this impacts their bottom line in a positive way, how it fills that early pipeline of talent that's essential, is part of it. And those intermediaries are essential to make it easier for them until it becomes systemic. Now we need our colleges, our community colleges, our CTE programs are powerfully effective, but right now it's a fragmented system. It needs to be a holistic system. So driving investments to bring those people together and to ensure that business voice is at the center, because if it won't, they won't do it. And that's a tragedy for them and our young people, ultimately our country.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, may I ask a second question? I just want to make sure I don't run out of time. Perfect, thank you. I also would like very much to focus on the importance of youth workforce development with regard to STEM and STEAM. Very, very excited that my community is actively investing in initiatives that would be able to prepare our youth for valuable and needed STEM careers with the development of new STEM high school academies in places like Reading, Pennsylvania, that have been funded by federal COVID aid, as well as Westchester University's New Sciences and Engineering Center. To Mr. Ebbing, who I believe is on the screen, similar to my community in Pennsylvania's 6th District, you mentioned that local schools in your area are establishing new career-based curricula. Can you please describe how these developments benefit local communities across our country, as well as student success and career readiness?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, it's been a game changer for us. We've been layering career connection curriculum in at the freshman and sophomore year already in with the STEAM curriculum, so that they're not only become interested in STEM and STEAM and all that goes with it, but how the careers, relate to those courses. So to us, it's been a game changer in the sense of just truly layering in that information at an early age. So every freshman will take the class, a lot of sophomores will take it to again learn not just about the classwork, but how it relates to the real world. And we bring companies in to educate them on what this classwork means to them at the company. And it just sows the seeds of awareness and connecting the dots that when the students become juniors and seniors, whether or not they want to go into career technical education or straight into a pre-apprenticeship program, now they're armed with that information of truly understanding what this class means to the real world in the career. So layering it in, we believe, is very important as part of that education model in the early high school years.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your time, and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. I will now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just made a few notes here. One thing I'm sure you're involved with them too. I represent Fort Hood, largest military base in America. We've got a lot of soldiers that are transitioning out that need some assistance. And I hope somehow they're included in your program too, because a lot of them are 20, 21, 22 years old. They're disciplined, they know how to work, they need a job, and they're pretty good. So that's a big, I think, opportunity for us to do that. And I think also a lot of these kids today don't have the background we had from the fact that you go to work and, hey, if you make money, that's good. Profits are really good and so forth. They don't hear that so much anymore. They almost hear the opposite. They hear that $15 minimum wage is a career. It's not a career, okay? They need to think bigger than that. Undrawn unemployment is not a career, okay? They need to, bringing a payroll check home is pretty good. And I think they have to fight with that all the time, and then they hear about, well, that you can borrow money, it'll be written off. You don't have to pay it back. Then they hear back that, like the student loans, they don't have to pay their car notes for various reasons. They got forbearance on their apartments. I mean, it sets a bad tone for a mind that wants to work and get after it. We need to be much more positive toward these kids and show them how to make a living. They don't need all this. And at the end of the day, from a small business owner standpoint, we need to cut taxes. We need to quit raising taxes and talking about it. Cut taxes so I have extra money that I can go out and instead of having 6 apprentices, I can go have 16 apprentices. So that's the kind of the things we need to do. And so I would just say real quick, Ms. Watkins, and we talked about this, but I want to hear what you have to say about the opportunity. What steps can a business owner like mine, I employ over almost 300 people, what can I do to establish connections with CTE programs and recent graduates? You know, I told you got a bill, we tell them, hey, there's opportunity out there, but how can I do that?
That's a great question. So I think, first of all, going back to the Swiss model or the German model, one of the key things is that it's like a stool with 3 prongs. It has government support, it has business support, and it has the school support. And I think small businesses in particular, helping us reach out to you and you reaching back to us. I think there's opportunity as simple as reaching out and saying, hey, I need employees that can do these things. We have an automotive program right now, and right across the street from our center is the Hazelwood Group. And the Hazelwood Group is an automotive group that is next to us. So they actually work with bringing our students in just to see what their shops look like now, because the parents' shop days of what it looked like in an automotive shop is not what it looks like today. So getting them involved and into and interested in that way also, I think, is really critical.
Well, you're right. I mean, I get back to my business again. These kids are electricians. They're not mechanics, you know, or they used to call them wrenches. And these are smart kids.
Absolutely.
And they really, really do well. And shops are cleaner. Just a great opportunity for them. And we need them bad. We need body people. We need them in body shops. We need them badly. They can fix these cars and so forth. So anyway, look, we get political here a lot. Most of the time we are. I've already been political in my statements today. But at the end of the day, what y'all are doing is great. And it's going to, my business is a 3rd-generation business now. My kids run it. And they got to be able to have a workforce to continue the business and so forth. And we got to make tax cuts permanent so we make more money, because what we don't have in business, what people understand about businesses like mine and yours, that if we make money, we don't save it, we spend it, and we invest, and we give opportunities. So thank you for being here. I yield. Yes, sir. Mr. Ginsburg.
Well, something you said resonates with me in that the jobs that you create in your shop pay really well. Mm-hmm. But in this country, if we say there's only one path to opportunity, and that's a 4-year degree, then there is something less than in a job in your shop or in my company, and it shouldn't be. There should be equal dignity in any path that you choose that leads to a career that puts a roof over your head, a car in the garage, an opportunity for your children. And business holds the key to that. And I just want to emphasize that when we talk about the future, it's not just one pathway to opportunity in this country anymore. That ends up with trillions of debt, non-completers in our 4-year system, and business without the talent they need.
When you talk about dignity, I can tell you we had a cold snap in Texas, and those plumbers and those welders were called, and nobody asked them, what are you going to charge me when you get out here? So they, but you're right. A job is a job. A job in America is the greatest job. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. Thank you to our witnesses again for joining us today. The pandemic inflicted a deep shock on the American labor force, and as we continue to work back toward normalcy, workforce development programs can help boost our pool of qualified workers, provide young people with the education and skills they need to launch their careers. Although I will say, some people say return back to normal, and we're not ever going to return back to the normal as it used to be, because things are changing. The workforce is evolving. The future is looking different, and it should, because I think that, as you all mentioned, there are greater opportunities for our young people that we have to pursue for them. And we've seen the power of youth apprenticeship programs in providing that, and the ability to upskill workers and to help small businesses meet their staffing needs. So I think there is consensus that embracing this model and others like it, we can make these programs more accessible to young people and small businesses alike. So I look forward to working with the committee members to pursue policies that will help achieve this goal. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. And if there is no further business to come before the committee, without objection, we are adjourned.